Gareth O'Shea, John, counterintuition.com. It's been too long. It's good to be back. I've been sitting on this one for a while, really mulling it over, and I think it's finally ready. I can't keep it in anymore. I have to make a podcast about it, and I really, really hope you enjoy it. I think you will. It's a fairly novel approach to something that's taken for granted. Basically, what I want to show is that emotion and the mind are not separate. They're not. If you were to go on to Google and you type in emotions and intellect or emotions in the mind, there are these, you will get, hundreds of thousands of results for, which is better, emotions or the intellect. And all these people are like, well, emotions are important, but the intellect is, it's important to have discipline and all this kind of stuff in your mind. And it just goes on and on and on. Not a single place could I find what the statement I'm about to make, and that is that emotions are the mind. Without emotions, you cannot actually think. They're even more superior to just regular thoughts on their own. And let me show you how that is. I'll give you an example and we'll take it from there. So let's imagine you have two flatmates. They're living together, and one of the guys finds the other guy's cereal, right? And he uses the last bit of cereal in that morning. It's gone. He doesn't replace it. The other guy gets home. He's been dying for the cereal all day. He comes home to have some, and it's gone. Now, in that moment, he might be a bit ticked off. Just normal response would be, hey, I just ticked off. I wanted to have that, and you took it, and you didn't replace it, whatever. But you'd say, maybe the guy didn't get a chance to replace it yet, or, it's just a bit of cereal. I have other things to do with my evening. Maybe I can have a, chocolate bar or something in the meantime and get some cereal tomorrow. It's no big deal, right? It ticked me off a little bit, but no big deal. Okay, so he comes back, he buys cereal the next week. Same thing happens again. He comes home and the cereal is gone, and he had budgeted, he's in college or whatever, he doesn't have a lot of money. He had budgeted the exact amount of cereal, and it's now gone. He thought he had another bowl, and it's gone. So at this point, now he's a bit more ticked off because he's like, okay, this is something that's going to keep happening, and I don't have a lot of money, and I'm kind of hungry. So he sits down with his flatmate and he says, dude, will you replace my cereal as soon as you finish it, or just not have it at all? And the flatmate's like, yeah, bro, no problem. And, it's courteous, whatever. He's the first time talking about it, so he might be a little firm, but he's not too, in his face. So they're like, cool. They come to an arrangement. Fine. If I eat your cereal, I'll replace it. If I don't replace it, I won't eat it. Or if I can't replace it, I won't eat it. So the following week, it's fine. The next week after that, again, the cereal is there all the time. The guy's replacing the cereal, whatever. 5th week comes by, 6th week, and the guy comes home and his cereal is gone again. Now, they've already had this discussion. He's had this discussion once. It's happened twice, and now this is the 3rd time. Okay, now he's ticked because, there was an understanding. The guy said he'd take care of the cereal or whatever, and he didn't. So now he's feeling anger. He might feel anger, or at least frustration, because there was an understanding. And if you were to take the situation on itself, so he comes home, there's no cereal. We look at it for the very first time, just like the very first time it happened. And if he was to confront his friend and say, hey man, what's the story? Where's my cereal? That would be an inappropriate response if it was the first time, right? But it's not, it's the 3rd time. Now, people don't have this long-term memory, so they do take these things in the moment. And if the guy freaks out at that point, the other guy who ate the guy's cereal without asking permission, without replacing it, he might be like, why are you freaking out? Why are you being so emotional? I just ate your cereal. I'll get you some more. Without taking into consideration the fact that this is actually the 3rd time it's happened. So the emotion is the category of those 3 experiences. It's one super thought. If you could think of it like a super thought, it's one thought that embodies all these others. And so it's a thought that tells you more information than is at hand. So it's not, my problem is not that you've eaten my cereal right now. My problem is that this is the 3rd time you've eaten my cereal, and after we've had a discussion, you're still not respecting the fact that I want to be able to budget correctly with my cereal, right? So the emotion, the anger, that is what's telling the guy. He's feeling this emotion because it's accumulation of all of these thoughts before. So it's completely rational. It's completely rational, and it's a category. And so if we can look at all emotions like this, then we see that the feelings that we have, like even feelings of happiness, feelings of of intense sadness or whatever, it's not necessarily the situation itself. It would be the accumulation of situations. Now, it could be one incredibly sad thing that would just happen in one go, absolutely. But the majority of the time, people feel emotions would actually be from series of events, the accumulation of series of events. And without being able to accurately say, I have a problem that you ate my cereal, because again, if it's the one time that the guy's eating a cereal, it really wouldn't be right. to freak out, but because it's happened over a series of times and the guy can't immediately recall when or where. I know anyone listening will have this experience when they're freaking out about something and you say, oh, you never did this, or you always do this, and the person's like, okay, name them, and you can't name the situations that you're giving out about. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's where they can kind of catch you out. But the truth is that the reason the emotion is there is the emotion is telling you that this has happened in the past. And so when people like freak out, have incredible temper tantrums, or they just get angry, or they just get sad, and people are looking at them like, wow, that really wasn't very tragic, or that really wasn't very anger inducing. What we have to then extrapolate from that situation is that this is actually the culmination of a whole bunch of things, and so the emotion is then the way that this is you are now processing the situation in a continuum, not just in the moment itself. And so the importance then of discouraging emotion is actually a way of stopping people from dealing with problems, and worse, from putting up with. You can cause people to put up with incredibly horrendous situations if you can stop them from. If you can demonize emotion, if you can tell them that, oh, you're just being emotional, you silly woman, you're just being emotional, or men don't have emotions, man up, whatever, this kind of thing. Whenever people do that, they're trying to manipulate the person into being subservient and being actually subhuman, and I'll show you why it would be important in a second. But it basically, what people call anger, and it's really anger I want to talk about more than the others, because I think people do have a good idea of the others, but at least in theory, anger itself is not something that people experience a whole lot in their lives. We, especially in the Western world here, and actually in third world countries, anywhere that you have a kind of a government structure, or any kind of hierarchical social structure, we don't get to be angry. We get frustration. Now, frustration, we could say, is an emotion also, but I think frustration kind of stands on its own, because frustration is what you feel when the other emotions aren't being dealt with. So when you're suppressing the other emotions, you then become frustrated because you don't know what to do. And so a lot of people can call frustration anger, but it's not. Like, a lot of TV shows, and there's one on TV right now, Love Hate, where it's just a bunch of young guys, and they're angry. We say that they're just being angry. They're going on shooting each other and beating each other up and all that kind of thing, but they're not actually angry. They're frustrated. Anger looks different, and anger is very, very precise and very purposed, in the same way that happiness and sadness is. It's a very, very legitimate emotion, whereas frustration is almost like the lack of emotion. Frustration is the emotion that you feel in the absence of all the others, and it's basically this confused, kind of helpless state where you can only lash out because you don't know what else to do. So if you could look at why people would want you to suppress, if you suppress any one of these emotions, okay, so anyone, like if you could suppress happiness, if you suppress anger, if you suppress sadness, you can cause people to be to act in ways that they wouldn't normally. You can cause people to not react to certain situations and to confront problems head on. The one that is picked most often by folk who like to manipulate other people, sociopaths and psychopaths and these kinds of people, they pick anger to go after. And the reason that it's really, really important to go after anger is because it's actually frustration. You can cause somebody to be frustrated, call that anger, and then everyone's like, yeah, that's really not a very desirable emotion, because because it isn't. Frustration isn't. But if you rename it anger, and if you call that, you say that's what anger is, that's what happens when people are, they're mad, they're out of control, and that it's an easy sell. Whereas you can't say, oh, you're too happy. That's much more difficult to do. But all you would have to do is take out one of these emotions. If you can suppress one of these emotions, it actually invalidates all the others too, and so all you're left with is frustration then. And the idea then would be to just manage people's frustration with medications and prisons and all that kind of thing, and threats of legal ramifications, that kind of thing. So if you suppress anger, and if you could imagine like a spectrum, okay, where you have on one end of the spectrum, if you can imagine just a straight line, and you have on one end you have anger, and on the other you have happiness or contentment, or I'm not, nothing. You're just totally happy. You could sit down and just smile, and that's it. That's happiness. You're totally content. Everything's just going perfect for you. And on the other end, you have anger, where you are not content with everything. You want to change something. You want to right a wrong. You want to go after somebody in order to to fix a problem. If you suppress anger by telling people not to feel angry, anger is just this horrible, out of control emotion where you just only hurt people. then you lose the point on the spectrum. So you actually wipe out the entire spectrum. You can now no longer place things in the spectrum. You can't place situations and perspectives and people's opinions and what people say to you and what people do to you. You can't do it. So if you do have the spectrum and somebody says, they come to me and they give me €1,000,000, I would put that very close to all the way to the end of the happiness spectrum. That is really cool, because now I can accomplish a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't been able to before. So that's where it would go on the spectrum. If somebody came over and they smacked me in the face for absolutely no reason, I would put that down towards the anger side of the spectrum. Not all the way, but it would be, so I would be able to place it somewhere in that spectrum. If I remove anger from that spectrum, then there's no longer a spectrum. There's just one point of view, and it's happiness. So everything is judged against happiness. It's no longer judged against anger or sadness. Does that make me angry? Does that make me sad? No. It's the question is, does it make me happy? If it doesn't, then that's not making me happy. It's not making me angry. It's not making me sad. It's just not making me happy. And for that reason, we avoid dealing with that problem. Because now I'm just going to go after the things that do make me happy. So without that spectrum, you remove people's teeth. They can't do anything about anything, because everything's just judged against being happy. So all they're going to do is pursue the things that make them happy, and not pursue the things that cause them anger and cause them sadness, which is absolutely equally legitimate. And this would include, abuses and people beating them up and people taking their stuff. If you look at the whole concept of tax in general, if we're just dealing with the most general that everyone accepts, they don't personally like to pay taxes, but on some level they think it's good. If you don't have anger in the spectrum, if all you have is happiness, you could place, okay, somebody wants to take money off me, and does that make me happy? No. Does it make me angry? Well, I don't know what anger is, because I don't use anger. It's not in my spectrum. So it just doesn't make me happy. So I'm now going to just ignore that and move on to the next thing. That doesn't make me happy. It's something that's happening to me. What can I make happen to me that will make me happy? And so you completely retard people's ability to deal with problems and deal with injustices in their own lives. So if you suppress that anger, and again, just to clarify, it is not the same thing as frustration. Frustration is bad. But frustration is what you end up with when you suppress any one of these other emotions, if not all. You end up with frustration, and you see it. I mean, we see, all over the newspapers, guys just, one day they just get up, they get a knife, and they just start hacking up their family, and then they kill themselves. Or, if you're in the States, or anywhere else where guns are kind of more widely available, they do the same thing with guns. They just take the guns and they just go blast up a bunch of people, and then they shoot themselves. It's just frustration. There's the whole idea is that they're trying to regain some kind of control of something. So I'm not advocating for frustration. I'm advocating for anger, which is how you stave off the effects of frustration. And again, the importance of anger. If we do not get angry, we will continue to allow abuses, but not only that, we will actually promote it, because the better we do as individuals, the more prosperous we become, the more respected we become. As we gain a reputation, and then we show people not to deal with anger, we are promoting evil, and we're allowing evil people and, like these psychopaths and sociopaths to operate freely within the culture. And people who take on the characteristics who may not necessarily be psychopathic, but they take on the characteristics because that's how you survive in a culture that's run by psychopaths, which is what we have. But that's a whole other podcast. So without any one of these emotions, anger, sadness, all this, love, if you could categorize love as an emotion, it is an emotion as well as, obviously there's a whole bunch of definitions for love, but love is something you can feel. It's an involuntary response to the kind of virtues that you see in other people, and the kind of things that they've worked hard to accomplish. You can look at that and go, wow, I love that. I love what they've been working on. If we remove anger, again, we also nullify our ability to love. We can't actually love people, because if our spectrum, again, on one end you have anger and another end you have love, where do you place things? So if somebody wrongs you, you can still say you love them, right? But it has absolutely no meaning, because you're just going to treat everybody the same no matter what. So then actions have no consequences, and if actions have no consequences, then there's no reason to be virtuous. There's no reason to try hard to please people. There's no reason to fight against abuse. And so that's what we end up with. The reason that people go along with it, and obviously people in authority have it in their interest to remove these kinds of things from people, because this is what allows you to think. It allows you to process information correctly. It allows you to place situations and opinions and principles and laws and logic and every kind of thought process you can have. It allows you to place it in a perspective relative to all the others. Spectrums are so important for that reason. That's all we do with our minds all the time. It's just all universalizing, and that's what children do from a very early age, and we just continue to do it, and that has to be then suppressed. If it's not present, it means it's been taken away or suppressed. And the reason children go along with it is because or slaves for that matter, anybody who isn't in a position of authority, anybody who's, if you could look at the examples of people who have the least amount of social control and social power, economic independence, and that kind of thing, why would they go along with it? And the answer is simple. If they get angry, they get hurt. So if a child gets angry, he will get hurt. He will get something taken from him, or he will get something. He will not receive something he was going to receive as a child or as a slave. And if they don't get angry, then they do get these things. And so you end up with children who get frustrated rather than angry. They get frustrated because these are emotions that are being suppressed in order for them to basically survive and have nice stuff. And so children take that on. Slaves take that on. And if they know that if they were to get angry, they would have these things taken away from them and put themselves in considerable danger. And so it could be argued that a lot of people today have never actually even experienced anger. They've only ever experienced frustration. And so it can be very, very difficult to talk about to people if they don't know what you're talking about. If they think frustration is the same thing, then when you say you need to get angry, all they'll be thinking is, oh no, I better not, because I'll go to prison for what I do. No, anger is very, very purposed, very directed, and it can be equally motivating to happiness or sadness or whatever else kind of emotion you can come up with. But if we recognize that all of these emotions stem from categories of thoughts, then we realize that if you were to push down those emotions, you're actually suppressing the mind. You're actually stopping people from thinking. Again, if we're looking at emotion being the category of situations that have occurred in a continuum, then if you suppress the emotion, you're suppressing people's ability to place themselves in time. They can't even say, like the example of the guy with the cereal, if he had 6 weeks ago, he was wronged. 5 weeks ago he was wronged, and then this week he was wronged. If you suppress the anger that he would feel from being wronged 3 times in that 6 week period, you're also suppressing his ability to see time as a continuum, and so he will be more inclined to look in the moment and not over time. And this is obviously what we see. We've never seen such a push towards immediate gratification, as people just all they want is immediate gratification. Drink, drugs, pornography, chocolate, whatever it is, they just want immediate gratification to make them happy in the moment. And they can't, they're not actually capable of looking into the future or looking into the past. They're not able to extrapolate the pleasure that they could feel if they look back in the last 6 weeks. Had I done this over the last 6 weeks, I'd have this today. They can then put that into the future and say, well, if I start doing this today, I can have this in 6 weeks, and that's going to make me much happier. If you suppress the emotions, you suppress people's ability to read time. And if they can't read time, they won't plan for their future, and they'll only ever be living in the moment. So they become much more docile, much more manipulative. So if you don't have emotions, you are a perfect candidate to be a slave. So if anybody ever tells you you're just being emotional, stop being emotional, you need to get yourself away from those people, or at least explain to them, look, this is me thinking right now, and try and figure out what it is that they would get from you if you were to stop being emotional, in inverted commas. So I think that pretty much sums it up. I'm not sure if it was clear enough. I know I spoke very quick, but it's really, really, really important to me, and maybe I should do a follow-up on this one. But just to summarize, emotion is the mind. It is the mind. So emotions are thoughts. You can't actually be intelligent without emotion, and this is something that really needs to be, because as a dude, I know that constantly within the culture, as a man, men are told, and as boys they're told, you need to man up, you need to don't be crying, no, don't be doing any of that stuff, and what I would say is actually, if you listen to that, I get it, like it's survival when you're young and when you're trying to survive in an abusive family situation, or an abusive home, or an abusive school, or abusive wherever you are. It is survival. There's nothing actually wrong with it when it's survival. But when you're on your own, you're economically independent, it's time to fight back, and it's time to relearn what it's like to feel, what it's like to have anger, what it's like to have sadness, and ultimately, as a result of that, happiness and love. We learn that stuff too. That'll just come naturally. It's completely involuntary, but we have to recognize that when we're being emotional about something, when we're feeling something that we can't quite explain in the moment, it's probably, and no, not all the time, but it's probably because this is not the first time this thing has happened, or you're picking up on something that you've used past situations, you're accumulating them together, and you're making a deduction that something is not quite right here, or something is quite right here, or whatever it is you can't explain about that situation, but you know it pertains to that situation. You know, something just happened and now you feel overwhelmingly angry, or overwhelmingly sad, or overwhelmingly happy. Then the reason that's happening is because this is the accumulation of other things in the past. And so long as we recognize that, we're going to be able to make proper decisions regarding the culture. If everyone on earth was to understand that emotions are the most important, if you suppress emotions, you suppress the mind. If everyone on earth was to understand this, overnight social problems would just start disappearing, because we'd be able to see things in their correct perspective. We'd be able to see things through time instead of just in the moment. So thanks so much. Please let me know what you think in the comments on YouTube or over on counterintuition.com. Obviously, if you downloaded the MP3, you can't leave a comment, but you're more than welcome to pop over and leave one on YouTube or on Counterintuition, or even on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as well, and you can find all that through counterintuition.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.